When those who believed themselves to be the sole masters of the cosmos discovered the echoes of a forgotten world, the very foundations of their empire trembled. For 3 millennia, the Zaharian Empire had reigned unchallenged across the known galaxy. Their hive-mind civilization, built upon advanced biotechnology that merged insectoid efficiency with humanoid form, had subjugated or eradicated all other intelligent species they encountered. The Zaharians' chitin-plated bodies housed organic supercomputers. Their ships were living organisms that traversed the void between stars, and their weapons harnessed the power of engineered microorganisms that devoured matter at the molecular level. Emperor Caxtri, supreme ruler of the Zaharians, gazed upon the holographic display of his domain from his living throne, a symbiotic chair that connected directly to his nervous system. 3,000 years of uncontested rule had bred absolute certainty in the superiority of his species. "Another cycle begins," he chittered to his council, his mandibles clicking in satisfaction. "The galaxy continues to yield its resources to the only civilization worthy of harvesting them." Subcommander Velnara, once the Empire's most brilliant biotechnologist before being converted into a living weapon of war, bowed her segmented form. "The outermost sectors report optimal efficiency. Emperor, the slave species continue their labor without significant resistance." None in the vast chamber of living architecture questioned the natural order. The Zaharians were the pinnacle of evolution, the only truly intelligent species left in existence. All others were either primitive organisms fit only for experimentation, or subjugated races whose sole purpose was to serve the Empire. Far beyond the reach of Zaharian sensors, on a blue-green world circling an unremarkable yellow star, humanity was taking its first tentative steps into interstellar space. Earth had suffered greatly in the 21st century. Climate disasters, resource wars, and finally, a devastating global conflict had nearly extinguished human civilization. But from the ashes of near extinction rose a unified species, tempered by hardship and driven by an indomitable will to survive. After centuries of recovery and technological advancement, humanity had finally achieved what their ancestors had only dreamed of: faster-than-light travel. The Armstrong, Earth's first FTL-capable exploratory vessel, hovered at the edge of the solar system. Its sleek, angular form contrasted sharply with the organic curves of Zaharian craft, though none aboard knew of such comparisons. To humanity, they were alone in the universe, pioneers venturing into the great unknown. On the bridge of the Armstrong, Admiral Kate Rivers stood with her hands clasped behind her back, steel-gray eyes fixed on the viewscreen. At 53, Rivers carried herself with the quiet dignity of one who had witnessed both humanity's darkest moments and its greatest triumphs. Born in the aftermath of the recovery era, she had risen through the ranks of the United Earth Space Command with a tactical brilliance that bordered on prescience. "Final system checks complete, Admiral," reported Captain Jake Murphy. Her executive officer, Murphy, a burly man with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow and quick, intelligent eyes, had served with Rivers for 15 years. "We're ready to make the jump beyond Pluto's orbit." Rivers nodded, her short, silver hair catching the light. "This is what we've worked toward for generations, Captain. Not just the technology, but the unity. After everything we've endured, humanity is finally ready to see what lies beyond our cradle." "The question is," Murphy said quietly, "is what lies beyond ready for us?" Rivers allowed herself a small smile. "Let's find out. Initiate the jump sequence." The Armstrong's quantum drive engaged, folding space around the vessel. In an instant that stretched into infinity, the ship vanished from the solar system, leaving behind only a rapidly fading distortion in the fabric of reality. Unknown to the crew of the Armstrong, their quantum signature, unique in the galaxy, sent ripples through subspace that were detectable by advanced Zaharian monitoring outposts. In the central nexus of the Empire, an alarm sounded for the first time in 700 years. Subcommander Velnera's compound eyes widened as she processed the data. "Impossible," she whispered, her voice like dry leaves rustling. "A new signature has appeared. It matches no known configuration." Emperor Caxtry's attention focused instantly on the anomaly. "Explain." "A quantum disturbance originated from a previously unmonitored system. The signature suggests artificial technology, yet it bears no resemblance to our biotech or any recorded slave species capabilities." Caxtry rose from his living throne, towering over his subordinates. "You suggest a new intelligent species has achieved faster-than-light capability without our knowledge? Impossible. Our surveys have cataloged all systems capable of supporting complex life." "Evidently not, Emperor," Velnara replied, her tone carefully modulated to avoid suggesting the Emperor could be wrong. "The signal originated from a yellow dwarf system in Sector 971, previously classified as hosting only primitive, pre-technological life forms during our survey 800 cycles ago." Caxtry's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. "Dispatch a scout vessel immediately. If there is indeed an emergent species with such technology, they must be assessed and brought into the Empire." "At once, Emperor." 3 weeks later, the Zaharian scout vessel, Ketvalar, approached the Sol system with caution. Unlike the crude metal constructions of humanity, the Ketvalar was a living entity, a bioengineered organism with a hardened exoskeleton capable of withstanding the vacuum of space, propelled by organs that manipulated gravitational fields, and controlled by a neural network that interfaced directly with its Zaharian crew. Commander Laxtor observed the approaching star system through both visual sensors and the ship's empathic field. "Curious," he noted to his second, scientist Mexala. "The third planet shows significant electromagnetic emissions. Their technology appears to be primarily electronic rather than biological." Mexala's sensory tendrils quivered with disdain. "Primitive. Even the Quillen achieved bio-integration before developing space travel." "Yet they have achieved FTL capability," Laxtor reminded her. "We must not underestimate." His words were cut short as the ship's sensors detected an approaching vessel. The Armstrong, returning from its maiden voyage, was on an intercept course. "They've detected us," Mexala stated unnecessarily. "Their vessel is accelerating." Laxtor's mandibles clicked in contemplation. "Open a communication channel. Let us see what manner of creatures we face." Admiral Rivers stood frozen on the Armstrong's bridge as the alien vessel came into view on the main screen. Its organic, almost insectoid appearance sent a chill down her spine. Not from fear, but from the overwhelming realization that humanity was not alone. "We're being hailed," Communications Officer Lisa Santos reported, her dark eyes wide with wonder. "The signal is strange. It's modulating to match our communication protocols." Rivers straightened her uniform, a sense of historical weight settling on her shoulders. "Put it through." The screen flickered, revealing a being that seemed to be an impossible hybrid of insect and humanoid. Its chitinous exoskeleton gleamed under the lights of its vessel, multiple compound eyes regarding the humans with alien intensity. "I am Commander Laxtor of the Zaharian Empire," the creature announced, its voice translated through a series of clicks and vibrations that the ship's computer struggled to interpret. "You have achieved technology beyond your expected development parameters. Identify yourselves." Rivers stepped forward, her face composed despite the momentous nature of the encounter. "I am Admiral Kate Rivers of the United Earth Space Command vessel Armstrong. We represent humanity and the planet Earth. We come in peace and with an offer of friendship." The alien commander's mandibles clicked rapidly, and Rivers sensed what might have been amusement or derision. "Peace is achieved through order," Laxtor replied. "Order is achieved through submission to the Empire. Your species has developed faster than anticipated. You will now be evaluated for integration. River's expression hardened slightly. We are not seeking integration into any empire. We offer equal friendship and mutual respect. Equality is a biological fallacy, Laxtor stated flatly. Species find their natural place in the hierarchy. The Zaharian Empire has ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years because we are evolutionarily superior. Your technological achievement is notable. You may earn a place of some privilege among our servant races. Captain Murphy stepped forward, unable to contain himself. We didn't come this far to become anyone's servants. Laxtor's head tilted, studying Murphy with clinical detachment. Your alternatives are assimilation or extinction. We will report your discovery to the Emperor. Prepare your leaders for the arrival of the Imperial delegation. They will determine your species' worth. The communication ended abruptly, leaving the bridge crew of the Armstrong in stunned silence. Did we just receive a submit or die ultimatum from an alien empire? Santos whispered. River's jaw tightened. It appears so. And something tells me they're not bluffing. She turned to Murphy. Set course for Earth. Maximum speed. We need to warn the United Earth Council immediately. As the Armstrong raced back toward Earth, Laxtor dispatched his report to the central nexus of the Zaharian Empire. The news of an independently developed FTL-capable species spread rapidly through the imperial hierarchy, reaching Emperor Caxtry within hours. The Emperor's reaction was swift and unequivocal. Send the ultimatum, he commanded. They will submit to biogenetic evaluation and integration, or they will be cleansed. There is no third option. The Imperial message reached Earth 3 days after the Armstrong's return. By then, the United Earth Council had been briefed on the encounter, and emergency sessions had convened to determine humanity's response. The message was broadcast on all frequencies and in all languages. To the species designating itself as humanity, the Zaharian Empire acknowledges your achievement of faster-than-light technology. You are hereby offered the opportunity to submit to imperial authority and biogenetic evaluation. Those deemed worthy will be uplifted and granted appropriate status within the imperial hierarchy. Resistance will be interpreted as biological aggression and met with immediate cleansing protocols. You have 1 planetary rotation to signal your submission. In the Grand Chamber of the United Earth Council in Geneva, representatives from every nation stood in grim silence as the message concluded. Admiral Rivers, called to testify before the Council, waited for the murmurs of disbelief and fear to subside. Council President Maria Chen finally spoke, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. Admiral Rivers, you've had the only direct contact with these Zaharians. In your assessment, what are our options? Rivers stepped forward, facing the assembled leaders of humanity. Madam President, distinguished councilors, I believe our options are limited but clear. From my observation of Commander Laxtor and analysis of the Zaharian vessel, I can tell you 3 things with certainty. They possess technology far beyond our current capabilities, particularly in biological engineering. They view other species purely in terms of utility and hierarchy, and they are absolutely convinced of their own superiority. Then you suggest we submit, asked the representative from the African Union, his voice tight with controlled anger. No, Rivers replied firmly. I suggest we fight. A wave of murmurs swept through the chamber. With respect, Admiral, interjected the Asian Coalition representative, you've just acknowledged their technological superiority. What chance would we have in a military confrontation? Rivers' steel-gray eyes swept the chamber. Throughout human history, technological superiority alone has never guaranteed victory. The Zaharians believe themselves to be the apex of evolution, which means they've likely grown complacent after thousands of years without meaningful opposition. They expect us to either submit out of fear or be easily defeated. In either scenario, They're underestimating us, and that gives us an advantage. President Chen leaned forward. What are you proposing, Admiral? That we respond to their ultimatum with a message of our own, Rivers said. One that makes it clear that humanity will not bow to threats. Meanwhile, we activate the Prometheus Protocol. Several council members exchanged glances. The Prometheus Protocol was the most closely guarded secret of the United Earth Space Command, a contingency plan developed in the aftermath of the last global war, when humanity feared its own extinction. Few outside the highest levels of military command knew its details. You believe we're ready for Prometheus? President Chen asked quietly. Rivers nodded. We've been preparing for over a century. Madam President, not for aliens, specifically, but for an existential threat to humanity. If ever there was a time to deploy the Dreadnoughts, it's now. After hours of debate, the Council reached its decision. Humanity's response to the Zaharian ultimatum was transmitted on the same frequencies. To the Zaharian Empire, we have received your communication. Humanity acknowledges your presence but rejects your terms. We do not bow. The message was deliberately brief, a statement of defiance rather than a negotiation. As soon as it was sent, the Prometheus Protocol was initiated worldwide. Hidden facilities beneath the lunar surface, deep within Earth's oceans, and concealed in asteroid bases throughout the solar system, hummed to life. The Dreadnoughts, massive warships designed to be humanity's last line of defense, began their activation sequences. In his living throne, Emperor Caxtree received humanity's response with a mixture of surprise and disdain. They refuse, he stated to his council, mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement. How biologically predictable. A species overestimates its chances of survival when first confronted with a superior force. Subcommander Velnara's compound eyes gleamed. Shall we dispatch a cleansing fleet, Emperor? No, Caxtree decided after a moment. Send a single battle group. 20 vessels should be sufficient to demonstrate our power and break their resistance. Have them target their military installations first, then their governance centers. Once they witness the futility of resistance, they will submit. Velnara bowed. It shall be done, Emperor. 3 weeks later, the Zaharian battle group emerged from FTL at the edge of the solar system. Led by Commander Zelvix aboard the Dreadnought-class bioship Dominator, the fleet began its approach toward Earth. Their sensors detected primitive defense satellites and a small number of armed spacecraft. Nothing that posed any significant threat to Zaharian biotechnology. Pathetic, Zelvix commented, viewing the system's defenses through the ship's sensory organs. They challenge the Empire with such meager forces. Prepare the microphage missiles for the first strike. Target their orbital installations. The Zaharian fleet advanced past Pluto's orbit, their formation precise and confident. They detected no significant resistance or even attempted communication from the humans. This was not unusual. Many species fell into panic or paralysis when faced with imperial might. What the Zaharians failed to detect, however, were the quantum signatures of 6 massive vessels hidden in the shadow of Pluto and its moon Charon. The Earth Dreadnoughts, Leviathan, Atlas, Deliverance, Nemesis, Harbinger, and Valkyrie, were unlike anything humanity had previously revealed. Each was nearly 2 kilometers in length, with angular, obsidian hulls that absorbed rather than reflected sensor scans. They were the culmination of a century of secret development, combining conventional weaponry with experimental quantum technologies. Aboard the Leviathan, Admiral Rivers stood at the command center, surrounded by holographic displays showing the approaching Zaharian fleet. Beside her, Captain Murphy studied the alien formation. They're not even in a defensive configuration, he noted. They're expecting a massacre, not a battle. Rivers nodded. And that's our advantage. All ships, maintain stealth protocols. Let them pass our position before we engage. She turned to her tactical officer. Lieutenant Collins, status of the lunar defense grid? Online and awaiting your command. Admiral, Collins replied, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. Quantum disruptors are charged and targeting systems are locked. Rivers took a deep breath. This would be humanity's first interstellar war, a baptism by fire against an enemy that had conquered countless worlds. Communications. Send the signal to Earth. Operation Prometheus is now active. As the Zaharian fleet crossed Neptune's orbit, they detected a sudden surge of activity from Earth. Defense platforms that had appeared dormant now powered up, and communication channels buzzed with encrypted transmissions. They're mobilizing their defenses, Zelvix observed dismissively. Too late and too little. Commence the attack sequence. The lead Zaharian vessels launched their first salvo, biotechnological missiles containing engineered microorganisms designed to consume metal and electronic components. They streaked toward Earth's orbital defenses, leaving trails of bioluminescent particles. But halfway to their targets, the missiles encountered an invisible barrier. The lunar defense grid, a network of quantum field generators hidden beneath the moon's surface, activated, creating a phase-shifted barrier that the biological weapons couldn't penetrate. The missiles detonated harmlessly against the quantum field, their deadly payloads dissipating in space. Impossible, Zelvix chittered, compound eyes widening. Their technology is not capable of... His statement was cut short as space itself seemed to ripple behind the Zaharian fleet. The 6 Earth dreadnoughts decloaked simultaneously, their massive forms emerging from quantum stealth like vengeful leviathans rising from the depths. All ships, weapons free, Rivers commanded. Execute Alpha Strike Protocol. The dreadnoughts fired in perfect synchronization. Not the crude projectile weapons or nuclear armaments the Zaharians might have expected, but concentrated beams of quantum destabilized particles that bypassed the biological shields of the alien vessels. 3 Zaharian ships were struck directly, their living hulls convulsing as molecular bonds began to break down. Aboard the Dominator, Zelvix reacted with shocked fury. All vessels, evasive pattern Ket 6, return fire on the human ships. The Zaharian fleet broke formation, organic propulsion systems pulsing as they maneuvered with surprising agility for their size. They returned fire with plasma-based weapons that superheated the vacuum of space, creating dazzling arcs of energy that crashed against the dreadnought's shields. The battle for humanity's survival had begun. On the bridge of the Leviathan, Admiral Rivers maintained her composure as the ship shuddered under Zaharian bombardment. Status report, she demanded. Shields holding at 87%, reported the defense officer. Their weapons are powerful, but our quantum dampening fields are neutralizing most of the energy. Atlas and Valkyrie report minor damage to outer hull sections. Communications Officer Santos added, Nemesis has destroyed 2 enemy vessels. Harbinger is engaging their flanking group. Rivers nodded, studying the tactical display. The battle was going better than expected, but the Zaharians were quickly adapting their tactics. They're trying to encircle us. Lieutenant Collins, activate the Charybdis Protocol. Collins hesitated for just a moment before entering the command sequence. Charybdis Protocol active, Admiral. God help us all. Throughout the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, hidden installations suddenly activated. What had appeared to be ordinary asteroids now revealed themselves as massive gravity generators, technology reverse-engineered from the quantum drive itself. The generators created localized distortions in space-time, invisible to the naked eye, but devastating to any vessel caught within their range. Lure them in, Rivers ordered. Nemesis and Harbinger, fall back toward the asteroid belt. Make it look like you're retreating. The 2 dreadnoughts appeared to break formation, accelerating away from the main battle toward the asteroid belt, pursued by 8 Zaharian vessels. They've taken the bait, Murphy observed grimly. As the pursuing Zaharians entered the asteroid field, the gravity generators activated simultaneously. Space twisted around the alien ships, stretching and compressing in ways that violated the fundamental laws of physics. The living vessels screamed, an actual psychic wail that was detected by the empathic sensors of the other Zaharian ships, as their biological structures were subjected to forces they were never designed to withstand. 3 Zaharian ships were torn apart instantly. 2 more spun out of control, their navigation systems compromised. The remaining 3 managed to reverse course, but not before suffering severe damage. Aboard the Dominator, Commander Zelvix watched in disbelief as nearly half his fleet was neutralized in a matter of minutes. "How?" he demanded of his science officer. "How could they possess such technology? They were pre-FTL less than a cycle ago." "Unknown, Commander," the science officer responded, her voice strained. "Their technology appears to manipulate quantum fields in ways our sensors cannot fully analyze. It is unexpected." Zelvix's mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. "Signal the nearest Imperial fleet. Inform them we are engaging a significantly more advanced adversary than anticipated. Request immediate reinforcements." But before the communication could be sent, the Leviathan and Atlas executed a pincer movement, cutting off the Dominator from the rest of the Zaharian fleet. Caught between the 2 massive human vessels, the Zaharian flagship found itself in a crossfire of quantum disruptor beams. "Their flagship is isolated," Rivers noted. "Captain Murphy, prepare a boarding party. I want prisoners and data. We need to know what we're really up against." Murphy nodded, his expression grave. "I'll lead the team myself, Admiral." Rivers turned to him, a moment of personal concern breaking through her professional demeanor. "That's not necessary, Jake. We have specialized strike teams for this purpose." "With respect, Admiral," Murphy replied quietly. "This is humanity's first contact with an alien enemy. I need to see them up close, understand what we're fighting. Besides, I'm the best qualified to identify valuable intelligence materials." After a moment's hesitation, Rivers nodded. "Very well. But I want you back in one piece, Captain." "That's an order." Murphy allowed himself a grim smile. "Yes, ma'am." As the battle raged across the outer solar system, the boarding shuttle departed from the Leviathan's launch bay, protected by a squadron of fighter craft. The small vessel navigated through the chaos of combat, dodging energy blasts and debris as it approached the damaged Zaharian flagship. Aboard the shuttle, Murphy addressed the 12 members of the boarding team, a mix of Special Forces operatives and technical specialists. "We have 3 objectives," he stated firmly. "Secure their command center, capture high-ranking officers for interrogation, and extract as much data as possible from their systems. Remember, we have no idea how their technology interfaces with their biology. Exercise extreme caution and maintain biocontainment protocols at all times." The team nodded, their expressions hidden behind the polarized visors of their combat exosuits, another product of the Prometheus Protocol, designed to enhance strength and provide protection against both conventional and biological weapons. The shuttle reached the hull of the Dominator, magnetic clamps securing it to the organic surface. Specialized cutting tools breached the living hull, which seemed to recoil and attempt to seal itself as they carved an entry point. "Movement inside," warned Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, the team's point person, as her suit's sensors detected life signs. "Multiple hostiles approaching the breach point." Murphy drew his quantum pulse rifle. "Defensive formation. Remember, we need prisoners." The breach point finally gave way, and the boarding team was immediately confronted by Zaharian defenders, warrior caste members with enhanced chitin plating and integrated biological weapons. The aliens fired globules of corrosive enzymes that sizzled against the human shields. "Non-lethal takedowns where possible," Murphy ordered, as he ducked behind a pulsating organic column. "We need intelligence more than we need body counts." The firefight was brief, but intense. The Zaharian warriors fought with the coordinated precision of a hive mind. But the human boarding team had the advantage of tactical flexibility and adaptability. Within minutes, 3 Zaharians were unconscious from targeted EMP bursts that disrupted their neural systems, and the rest had retreated deeper into the ship. "Advance to the central chamber," Murphy directed. "According to the scans, that's their command nexus." The team moved through corridors that seemed to be a hybrid of technology and biology, pulsing membranes lined with metallic conduits, chambers that expanded and contracted like a massive circulatory system. The ship itself was alive, and it seemed to be fighting them with every step, sealing passages and rerouting internal defenses. Finally, they reached a massive doorway composed of interlocking chitin plates. "This is it," announced technical specialist Yuki Tanaka, checking her scanner. "The command center is beyond this barrier, multiple life signs inside, including what appears to be the commanding officer." "Can we breach it?" Murphy asked. Tanaka studied the organic lock mechanism. "Yes, but not quietly. The ship will know we're coming." Murphy nodded. "We've lost the element of surprise anyway. Do it." Tanaka placed a quantum resonance device against the door. The device emitted a specific frequency that caused the organic components to temporarily lose cohesion. The massive door shuddered and then retracted, revealing the command center beyond. The chamber was unlike anything the humans had imagined. Instead of the bridge of a conventional starship, they found themselves in what appeared to be a neural nexus. Zaharian officers weren't seated at control stations, but were physically integrated into the ship itself. Their limbs and sensory organs connected to the vessel through biotechnological interfaces. At the center stood Commander Zelvix, his imposing form disengaging from a pulsating throne-like structure as the humans entered. Unlike his subordinates, he was fully mobile, his chitinous armor gleaming with bioluminescent patterns that shifted with his movements. "So," Zelvix chittered, mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement or contempt. "The primitive species sends its warriors to capture, rather than destroy. Interesting. Perhaps you are not as predictable as the Emperor believed." Murphy stepped forward, his weapon trained on the alien commander. "In the name of humanity and the United Earth Council, I'm taking command of this vessel. Order your crew to stand down." Zelvix's compound eyes glittered. "You speak as if you have already won this encounter, human. The Zaharian Empire spans 1,000 worlds. This resistance is merely a temporary setback." "A setback that cost you half your fleet," Murphy countered. "Surrender now, and we can avoid further bloodshed." The alien commander made a sound that might have been laughter. "Bloodshed? We do not bleed as you do, human. We evolve. We adapt." His form suddenly began to change, chitin plates shifting and reconfiguring. "And we are never defeated." Before Murphy could react, Zelvix lunged forward with impossible speed, a blade-like appendage extending from his forearm. The attack caught Murphy's exosuit at a weak point in the armor, penetrating the shoulder joint. Murphy stumbled backward, his suit's medical systems immediately injecting painkillers and coagulants. "Take him down!" he ordered through gritted teeth. The boarding team opened fire, their quantum pulse weapons targeting Zelvix with precision. The alien commander moved with preternatural agility, evading most of the shots, but several struck home, causing his exoskeleton to crack and ooze a phosphorescent fluid. "The ship is responding to his distress," Tanaka warned, checking her scanner. "Internal defense systems activating." The walls of the command center began to pulse more rapidly, and openings appeared in the ceiling, extruding organic turrets that dripped with caustic fluid. "Fall back to the extraction point," Murphy commanded, firing a sustained burst at Zelvix that finally brought the alien commander to his knees. "Rodriguez, secure the prisoner. Tanaka, download whatever data you can from their systems." Rodriguez moved to restrain the wounded Zelvix, while Tanaka interfaced her equipment with what appeared to be a central data node. a crystalline structure embedded in the living tissue of the command center. Data extraction in progress, Tanaka reported. Sir, this is incredible. Their entire database is encoded in biological molecules. It's like a combination of DNA storage and quantum entanglement. How long? Murphy asked, watching as the ship's defenses continued to activate around them. 2 minutes for a complete download, less for partial data. You have 1 minute, Murphy decided, checking the battle feed from his helmet display. Outside, the tide had turned decisively in humanity's favor. The remaining Zaharian vessels were either destroyed or retreating, with the Earth Dreadnoughts in pursuit. We need to get this intelligence back to Admiral Rivers immediately. As Tanaka worked to extract the Zaharian data, Murphy approached the captured commander, Zelvix's compound eyes fixed on him with alien intensity. You have won a single battle, human. The Zaharian chittered weakly. But you have started a war you cannot possibly comprehend. The Empire will not rest until your species is either subjugated or extinct. Murphy knelt beside the alien, studying its inhuman features. Why? What threat do we pose to an empire of 1,000 worlds? Zelvix's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Threat? You misunderstand. It is not about threat. It is about order. For 3,000 years, the Zaharian Empire has maintained the natural hierarchy of species. Each has its place. None are equal to us, but each serves its purpose. And what would humanity's purpose be in your hierarchy? That would have been determined by your genetic evaluation, Zelvix replied. Now, it will be determined by your defeat. Species that resist are broken, not integrated. Your fate is sealed, human. Before Murphy could respond, Tanaka called out. Download complete, Captain. But we've got problems. The ship is mobilizing internal defenses. Looks like some kind of antibody response. Time to go, Murphy decided, rising to his feet. Bring the prisoner. We're leaving. The retreat to the extraction point was a fighting withdrawal. The ship itself seemed to be mounting an immune response against the human invaders, with walls secreting caustic fluids and corridor membranes contracting to crush them. The team fought their way back, half carrying the wounded Zelvix and protecting Tanaka, who bore the precious data module. As they reached the breach point where their shuttle waited, Murphy's comm system crackled with an urgent transmission from the Leviathan. Captain, this is Admiral Rivers. Status report. Mission accomplished, Admiral, Murphy responded, wincing as his injured shoulder throbbed despite the painkillers. We've secured a high-value prisoner and extracted data from their systems. Preparing for extraction now. Expedite your return, Captain, Rivers ordered, her voice tense. We're detecting quantum disturbances near Saturn. Reinforcements are coming, a lot of them. Murphy felt a chill that had nothing to do with his injury. Understood, Admiral. We're on our way. As the boarding team secured Zelvix in the shuttle and disengaged from the Dominator, Murphy looked back at the alien vessel. Already, the breach they had created was sealing itself, the living ship healing its wounds just as an organism would. The shuttle raced back toward the Leviathan, escorted by fighter craft that engaged the few remaining Zaharian vessels still trying to mount a defense. Through the viewport, Murphy could see the rest of the solar system, where the battle had expanded into a full-scale war. The lunar defense grid was fully active, creating a protective bubble around Earth, while the Dreadnoughts engaged the enemy at the system's edge. And beyond Saturn, just as Rivers had warned, space itself was beginning to distort as a much larger Zaharian fleet began to emerge from FTL. We've stirred the hornet's nest, Murphy murmured to himself, watching as the first of what would clearly be many reinforcement vessels materialized. Now, we find out if humanity is ready for what comes next. The shuttle docked with the Leviathan, just as the ship was executing evasive maneuvers. Medical personnel rushed to assist the wounded boarding team members, while security officers took custody of the Zaharian commander. Despite his injury, Murphy made his way directly to the bridge, where Admiral Rivers was coordinating the human defense. "Captain," Rivers acknowledged as he entered, her eyes quickly assessing his condition. "Medical should be looking at that shoulder." "It'll keep, Admiral," Murphy replied grimly. "What's our situation?" Rivers gestured to the tactical display, where dozens of new contacts were appearing near Saturn. "The Zaharians have called in reinforcements, a full invasion fleet from the looks of it. We bloodied their nose, but now they're coming back with an army." Murphy handed her the data module Tanaka had extracted. "This contains their tactical database, communication protocols, and what appears to be a complete map of their empire. Specialist Tanaka is working on decryption now." Rivers took the module, her expression grave. "This could be the intelligence advantage we need, but we're still outnumbered and outgunned." She turned to Communications Officer Santos. "Signal all Dreadnoughts to fall back to lunar orbit. Activate all defense platforms, and send the alert to Earth. Prometheus Phase 2 is now in effect." Murphy recognized the code phrase, the implementation of humanity's last-ditch defense strategy. "The asteroid weaponization?" Rivers nodded. "We've been preparing for an extinction-level threat for over a century, Captain. Not specifically aliens, but something that could end humanity. The weaponized asteroids are just part of it." The bridge fell silent as the implications settled over the crew. Phase 2 of the Prometheus protocol involved using mass drivers to launch selected asteroids as kinetic weapons, a tactic that could devastate a planet if used against Earth. Now, those same weapons would be turned against the invaders. "The Zaharian prisoner," Murphy said after a moment. "He said something interesting. Their empire is built on a strict hierarchy of species. They don't just conquer, they categorize and assign roles based on genetic evaluation." Rivers' eyes narrowed. "You think we can use that somehow?" "Maybe. They seem to have a biological imperative to maintain what they see as the natural order. We disrupted that order by resisting successfully. If we can understand their psychology better. Work with intelligence on that angle," Rivers decided. "Meanwhile, we need to buy time for Earth to complete the Phase 2 preparations." The Dreadnoughts executed a fighting retreat, drawing the Zaharian reinforcements into carefully planned killing zones, where Earth's defensive capabilities were strongest. The lunar grid projected quantum disruption fields that neutralized the most devastating Zaharian bioweapons, while the Dreadnoughts' superior maneuverability in conventional space allowed them to execute hit-and-run attacks against the larger, slower alien vessels. Despite these advantages, the sheer number of Zaharian reinforcements began to tell. One by one, Earth's orbital defense platforms were overwhelmed and destroyed. The Dreadnought Harbinger suffered critical damage to its propulsion systems and was forced to make a last stand, its captain and crew fighting to the end to protect a civilian evacuation convoy. As the battle entered its second day, Admiral Rivers called an emergency strategy session aboard the Leviathan. The ship's command center had been converted into a war room, with holographic displays showing the deteriorating situation across the solar system. "The Zaharian main fleet will reach lunar orbit within 12 hours, Rivers stated, addressing the assembled officers and the holographic projections of commanders from the other dreadnoughts. Earth has completed 90% of the Phase 2 preparations, but they need at least another 18 hours to be fully operational. "We need to delay them," Captain Amy Foster of the Valkyrie said, her young face marked by exhaustion but still determined. At 32, Foster was the youngest dreadnought commander, a tactical prodigy who had risen through the ranks with unprecedented speed. "What about the Charybdis Protocol? Could we expand the gravity disruption field?" Technical Director Paul Martinez shook his head. "The generators in the asteroid belt are already at maximum capacity. We'd need to build and deploy additional units, which would take weeks." "What about the prisoner?" Murphy asked. "Have we learned anything useful from Commander Zelvix?" Intelligence Officer Steve Collins stepped forward. The Zaharian has been resistant to conventional interrogation. However, Dr. Tanaka has made progress in decoding their biological data storage. It appears the Zaharians operate on a hive mind principle, with their ships serving as extensions of this collective consciousness. Are you suggesting their ships are vulnerable to some kind of psychic attack? Rivers asked skeptically. Not exactly, Admiral, Collins clarified. But the ships themselves are semi-sentient organisms, connected to the Zaharian neural network. If we could disrupt that connection, it might disorient their fleet long enough to give us the time we need. A thoughtful silence fell over the war room. Finally, Captain Murphy spoke up. The Zaharian commander said something about their ships having an immune response to our boarding. If their vessels are truly biological entities, they might share common vulnerabilities with organic systems. Rivers turned to Dr. Tanaka, who had joined the meeting to present her findings on the Zaharian data. Doctor, is it possible to create some kind of virus that could affect their ships? Tanaka considered the question, her analytical mind working through the possibilities. Not a conventional virus, Admiral, but based on the data we've extracted, the Zaharian bioships operate on a standardized genetic template, a biological operating system, if you will. If we could introduce a targeted genetic disruptor— How quickly could you develop such a weapon? Rivers pressed. With the data we have, perhaps 8 to 10 hours. But delivery would be the real challenge. We'd need to introduce it directly into their command and control system, their equivalent of a central nervous system. Murphy's expression hardened with resolve. So we need to board their flagship again. Rivers studied the tactical display, where the massive Zaharian command vessel, nearly 5 times the size of an Earth dreadnought, was visible at the center of their formation. Not just any boarding action. We'd need to penetrate to the heart of their fleet, reach their command ship, and deploy this bioweapon directly into their systems. A suicide mission, Foster stated quietly. Not necessarily, Murphy countered. A small, fast vessel might be able to slip through during the confusion of battle. One ship, one team. Rivers looked at him, understanding immediately what he was proposing. You want to lead this mission yourself. I've already been aboard a Zaharian vessel. I know what to expect, and I've seen how their systems operate. With a small team of specialists, we could infiltrate their flagship while the Dreadnoughts create a diversion. For a long moment, Rivers was silent, weighing the desperate plan against the alternatives, none of which promised success. Finally, she nodded. Begin preparations. Dr. Tanaka, you have 6 hours to develop this bioweapon. Captain Murphy, assemble your team. The rest of you, prepare your ships for what may be our final engagement. As the meeting dispersed, Rivers held Murphy back with a gentle hand on his uninjured arm. When they were alone, her professional demeanor softened slightly. Jake, you know the odds of this mission succeeding are astronomical, he finished with a grim smile. I've never been good at math, Kate. Rivers met his gaze, the weight of command temporarily giving way to human connection. We've known each other too long for me to order you not to do this. But as your friend, I have to ask if there's another way. Murphy's expression was resolute. If there was, I'd take it. But we're out of options and out of time. Humanity has fought too hard to surrender now. After a moment, Rivers nodded. Then Godspeed, Captain. Make it count. 6 hours later, Murphy stood in the Leviathan's launch bay, surrounded by the 5 volunteers who would accompany him on the mission, a mix of technical specialists and combat veterans, each chosen for specific skills essential to the operation. Dr. Tanaka was among them, carrying a secure container that held the newly developed biological countermeasure. The bioweapon targets the central nervous system of their living ships, she explained, as the team made final preparations. Once introduced, it should propagate through their network in minutes, temporarily severing the connection between the Zaharian commanders and their vessels. "How temporary is temporary?" asked Sergeant Rodriguez, checking her weapon systems. "Based on their biological recovery rates, perhaps 30 to 40 minutes. After that, their immune systems will adapt and neutralize the disruption. Then we'll have to make every minute count," Murphy stated, sealing his exosuit. His injured shoulder had been treated, but the medical officers had made it clear that the quick healing compounds were a temporary solution at best. The team boarded the Phantom, a specialized stealth insertion craft developed under the Prometheus protocol. Unlike the larger Dreadnoughts, the Phantom was designed specifically for covert operations, with advanced stealth systems and a quantum signature masking field that made it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. As the launch bay doors opened, revealing the chaos of battle beyond, Murphy took one last look at the Leviathan, the ship that had carried humanity's hopes in this first interstellar conflict. Then, he turned his attention to the mission ahead. "All systems check," he announced to his team. "Prepare for launch." The Phantom detached from the Leviathan, its stealth systems engaging immediately. As per the plan, the 5 Earth Dreadnoughts were executing a coordinated attack against the Zaharian fleet, creating a deliberate gap in their formation that the insertion team could exploit. The small craft accelerated silently through the battlefield, dodging debris and energy discharges as it wove through the fighting. From the pilot's seat, Murphy guided the Phantom with the precision of a surgeon, exploiting every opportunity to advance closer to the massive Zaharian flagship. 5 minutes to intercept," he informed his team. "Final weapons and systems check." As they approached the Zaharian command vessel, a colossal living ship that dwarfed even the largest Earth dreadnought, the true scale of their mission became apparent. The flagship was a cathedral of biotechnology, its surface covered in what appeared to be sensory organs and defensive structures that pulsed with bioluminescent energy. "I'm detecting an entry point," Tanaka announced, studying her scanner. "What appears to be a maintenance access port on the ventral hull. It's periodically opening to release what might be waste products or defensive drones. Can we time our approach to slip through when it next opens?" Murphy asked. "Calculating now. Yes, but the window will be extremely narrow, less than 3 seconds. Murphy's hands tightened on the controls. "Then we'll just have to be precise. Everyone secure for high-G maneuvers." The Phantom accelerated, pushing its stealth systems to the limit as it approached the designated entry point. Around them, the battle raged, with Earth dreadnoughts exchanging devastating fire with Zaharian vessels. The distraction was working. The flagship's defensive systems were focused outward, not on detecting a tiny craft approaching from below. "Opening in 5, 4, 3, Tanaka counted down. Murphy pushed the Phantom into a tight spiral, aligning perfectly with the biological aperture as it began to dilate. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed they might not fit. The opening was narrower than anticipated, and the Phantom's wings scraped against the living tissue of the Zaharian ship. Then they were through, the aperture closing behind them with a wet, organic sound. The Phantom found itself in what appeared to be a massive internal chamber, perhaps a hangar or waste processing area, filled with a thin, nutrient-rich atmosphere that the ship's sensors identified as breathable but laden with alien microorganisms. "Maintain suit integrity at all costs," Murphy warned, as the team prepared to disembark. "We don't know what effect their biological agents might have on human physiology." The team exited the Phantom, weapons ready as they surveyed their surroundings. The interior of the Zaharian flagship was even more alien than the smaller vessel Murphy had boarded previously. The walls pulsed with visible circulation systems, carrying what appeared to be a phosphorescent fluid throughout the ship's structure. Neural pathways glowed with electrical activity, creating patterns that shifted constantly. "According to the data we extracted," Tanaka said, consulting her scanner, "the central nervous system of the ship should be located approximately 2 kilometers inward, toward what we might call the brain of the vessel. Then that's our target, Murphy decided. Stay tight, move quickly, and avoid engagement where possible. Our mission is delivery, not combat. The team advanced through the living corridors of the flagship, navigating by Tanaka's scanner and Murphy's previous experience with Zaharian vessel layout. Occasionally, they encountered Zaharian crew members, mostly worker castes, tending to the ship's biological systems, who scattered at the sight of the armed humans. "They're avoiding us," Rodriguez observed after their third such encounter. "Almost like they're afraid." "They should be," replied technical specialist Omar Cater grimly. "We've done more damage to their empire in 2 days than they've probably experienced in centuries." As they penetrated deeper into the flagship, however, resistance stiffened. Warrior caste Zaharians, their exoskeletons enhanced with additional armor and integrated weapons, began to appear in greater numbers. The team was forced to engage in brief, intense firefights, using the quantum pulse weapons that had proven effective against Zaharian biology. "We're getting close," Tanaka reported, after they fought their way through a particularly heavy concentration of defenders. The neural nexus should be just beyond that central chamber. The chamber she indicated was massive, a cathedral-like space dominated by a pulsating crystalline structure that hung from the ceiling like a chandelier of living light. Surrounding it were dozens of Zaharians, physically connected to the structure through biotechnological interfaces. "That's it," Tanaka whispered, awe evident in her voice despite the danger. "The central nervous system of the entire fleet. The Zaharians aren't just commanding their ships, they're becoming them." Murphy studied the chamber, noting the heavy guard presence and the apparent importance of the crystalline structure. "That's where we need to deploy the bioweapon. The question is how to reach it without being overwhelmed." Cater examined the environmental systems of his suit. "Sir, I'm detecting unusual energy patterns in the chamber. It appears the crystalline structure is generating some kind of quantum field, similar to our FTL technology, but configured differently." "Could we use that somehow?" Murphy asked. Tanaka's eyes widened behind her visor. Yes, we could. The bioweapon is designed to disrupt their neural pathways. If we could introduce it directly into that quantum field, it would propagate throughout their entire network almost instantaneously. But we'd need to get close enough to that crystal to deploy it," Rodriguez pointed out. "And there are at least 30 warriors between us and it." Murphy considered their options, acutely aware that time was running out. According to the mission clock, the Earth Dreadnoughts had been engaging the Zaharian fleet for nearly 9 hours. They couldn't hold out much longer without reinforcement. "We need a diversion," he decided. "Cater, can you reconfigure one of our quantum pulse rifles to overload? Create something big enough to draw their attention?" Cater nodded. "Yes, sir. I can set it to build to a cascading quantum failure. It would essentially create a miniature quantum singularity. Very short-lived, but extremely disruptive." "Do it, Rodriguez. You and Chen cover our flanks. Tanaka, stay with me. We'll make the approach to the crystal once the diversion is in play." As Cater worked to modify the rifle, Murphy studied the chamber again, calculating angles and distances. The crystal hung approximately 20 meters above the chamber floor, suspended by what appeared to be organic cables that pulsed with energy. "Diversion ready, sir," Cater reported, holding up the modified weapon. "Once I initiate the overload, we'll have approximately 45 seconds before detonation." "Set it here," Murphy directed, indicating a side passage that led into the chamber. "When it blows, the Zaharians will concentrate their forces in this direction. We'll circle around and approach the crystal from the opposite side." The team moved into position. With a final nod from Murphy, Cater activated the overload sequence and placed the rifle in the designated location. Immediately, the weapon began to emit a high-pitched whine and glow with increasingly intense energy. "Move out," Murphy ordered quietly. 40 seconds to detonation. The team split as planned, with Rodriguez and Chen creating a secondary diversion by firing controlled bursts toward the chamber entrance. As expected, the Zaharian guards responded immediately, moving to intercept what they perceived as a frontal assault. Meanwhile, Murphy and Tanaka circled around the periphery of the chamber, using the organic architecture for cover as they approached the crystal from the rear. They were halfway to their objective when the overloaded rifle detonated. The explosion was unlike anything Murphy had experienced. Not a conventional blast of heat and pressure, but a momentary tear in the fabric of reality itself. Space distorted around the detonation point, creating a swirling vortex of energy that lasted only seconds but caused massive disruption to the Zaharian defenses. Warriors were pulled toward the singularity, their chitinous forms cracking under the gravitational stress before being violently repelled as the anomaly collapsed. In the chaos that followed, Murphy and Tanaka made their final approach to the crystal. Up close, its complexity was breathtaking, a matrix of living crystalline structures that somehow encoded the collective consciousness of the Zaharian fleet. "Where do we deploy the bioweapon?" Murphy asked urgently, aware that the remaining Zaharian guards were already regrouping. Tanaka scanned the crystal, her instrument searching for the optimal insertion point. There, that junction where the energy flows converge, it's the equivalent of a primary synapse in a neural network. Murphy took the bioweapon container from Tanaka and moved toward the indicated point. The crystal pulsed more rapidly as he approached, as if sensing the threat. From across the chamber, Zaharian warriors were advancing, their biological weapons primed. "Captain, hurry!" Rodriguez called, engaging the approaching guards with covering fire. "We can't hold them much longer." Murphy reached the crystal, positioning the bioweapon container against the pulsating surface. But as he prepared to activate the delivery mechanism, a sudden pain lanced through his injured shoulder. The quick heal compounds were failing, and the original wound was reasserting itself with vengeance. "Captain," Tanaka asked, concern evident in her voice as she saw him falter. Murphy gritted his teeth against the pain. "I'm fine. Activating deployment sequence now." He pressed the initiation sequence on the container, and the bioweapon began to flow into the crystal, a dark contrast against the luminescent matrix. Almost immediately, the crystal's pulsations became erratic, its glow flickering as the disruptive agent spread through its structure. Throughout the chamber, the Zaharians connected to the neural network began to convulse, their bodies rejecting the sudden corruption of the signal. The warriors advancing on the human team stumbled, their coordinated attack faltering as the hive-mind connection weakened. "It's working," Tanaka confirmed, checking her scanner. "The disruption is propagating through their network, estimated complete neural severing in approximately 20 seconds. But the team wasn't safe yet. The Zaharian guards, though disoriented, were still dangerous. One warrior, larger than the others, and apparently more resistant to the neural disruption, charged directly at Murphy and Tanaka. "Look out!" Murphy shouted, pushing Tanaka aside as the Zaharian warrior's blade-like appendage slashed where she had been standing. The movement sent a fresh wave of agony through Murphy's shoulder, but he managed to raise his weapon and fire a sustained burst into the alien's central mass. The Zaharian fell, its exoskeleton cracking to reveal the vulnerable tissues beneath. But the attack had drawn the attention of the remaining warriors, who were now converging on their position, despite their neural impairment. "The bioweapon is fully deployed," Tanaka announced. "We need to go, now." Rodriguez and Chen fought their way to Murphy and Tanaka's position, providing covering fire as the team began their retreat. The crystal behind them was now pulsing erratically, its once bright glow dimming as the bioweapon corrupted its function. "Back to the Phantom," Murphy ordered, wincing as each movement sent pain shooting through his shoulder. Mission accomplished. The team fought their way back through the increasingly chaotic interior of the flagship. All around them, The living ship was reacting to the neural disruption, passages constricting, defensive systems activating, and then shutting down erratically. Zaharian crew members stumbling about in confusion without the guidance of the hive mind. By the time they reached the Phantom, Murphy was struggling to remain conscious. The pain from his reopened wound had intensified, and the medical systems in his suit were warning of potential systemic shock. "Get us out of here," he managed as Rodriguez helped him into the pilot's seat. "The exit point should still be open." With Tanaka's assistance, Murphy guided the Phantom through the internal chambers of the flagship, searching for the maintenance port they had used to enter. The ship's internal defenses were in disarray, firing sporadically, but without coordination, making evasion easier than it had been on their entry. Finally, they located the exit point, the organic aperture still periodically dilating as the ship's autonomic systems continued to function despite the neural disruption. "Timing will be critical," Tanaka warned, monitoring the aperture's rhythm. "The opening cycle appears to have become irregular." Murphy focused all his remaining strength on the controls, aligning the Phantom with the exit point and waiting for the next dilation. When it came, a sudden, spasmodic opening of the biological doorway, he thrust the small craft forward with perfect timing. The Phantom burst from the Zaharian flagship into the chaos of battle beyond. All around them, the effects of the bioweapon were evident. Zaharian vessels drifted aimlessly or executed erratic maneuvers, their coordination completely disrupted. The Earth Dreadnoughts, though damaged and depleted, were seizing the opportunity to press their advantage. "This is Captain Murphy to all Earth vessels," he transmitted, his voice strained but determined. "Mission successful. The Zaharian neural network has been compromised. Estimated window of effectiveness, 30 to 40 minutes. Strike now, while they're vulnerable." Admiral Rivers's voice responded immediately. "Understood, Captain. Well done. All Dreadnoughts, execute Operation Hammerfall. Targeting data has been transmitted to your systems." Murphy watched as the Earth vessels coordinated their attack with a precision the Zaharians could no longer match. The Dreadnoughts positioned themselves strategically around the disoriented alien fleet, targeting engines and weapon systems with surgical strikes that disabled rather than destroyed. "They're not going for the kill," Rodriguez observed, watching the tactical display over Murphy's shoulder. "They're disabling the fleet." "Smart," Murphy replied weakly. "We don't need to destroy them all, just demonstrate that we can." As the Phantom approached the Leviathan, Murphy's vision began to blur. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was the Zaharian flagship, the massive living vessel now drifting powerlessly. Its once bright bioluminescence dimmed to a faint glow. When Murphy awoke, he was in the medical bay of the Leviathan. The sharp pain in his shoulder had been reduced to a dull ache, and the steady beep of monitoring equipment filled the quiet room. Admiral Rivers sat beside his bed, her uniform showing signs of the extended battle, but her posture still commanding. When she saw that he was awake, a rare smile crossed her features. "Welcome back, Captain. You've been unconscious for nearly 18 hours. Murphy attempted to sit up, wincing as his shoulder protested. "The mission, the Zaharians." "Successful on all counts," Rivers assured him. "Your team's deployment of the bioweapon created exactly the window we needed. The Zaharian fleet was neutralized long enough for Earth to complete the Phase 2 preparations. When their systems came back online, they found themselves surrounded by our asteroid-based weapons platforms, with quantum disruptors locked on every one of their ships." "They surrendered?" Murphy asked, surprised. Rivers nodded. "Their admiral requested a direct communication channel approximately 2 hours after your mission. Apparently, our demonstration of both technical capability and tactical restraint confused them. They're accustomed to species either submitting immediately or fighting to extinction."
"What happens now?"
"Negotiations," Rivers replied. We've secured a temporary ceasefire while both sides assess the situation. The Zaharian Admiral, Admiral Kexar, has requested permission to send a diplomatic envoy to Earth. The United Earth Council is considering the request. Murphy absorbed this information, trying to reconcile the swift transition from existential threat to diplomatic engagement. Can we trust them? About as much as they can trust us, Rivers said with a slight shrug. But the alternative is continued war, and neither side seems eager for that at the moment. Our intelligence team has been working with the data you recovered, building a more complete picture of the Zaharian Empire and its subject worlds. She handed him a tablet displaying what appeared to be a galactic map, with Zaharian territory highlighted in red. They weren't lying about the scale of their domain. Over 1,000 worlds, dozens of subjugated species. We've barely scratched the surface of understanding what we're dealing with. Murphy studied the map, noting the vast expanse of Zaharian control and the tiny dot that represented Earth's solar system. So we bloodied their nose, and now they're willing to talk instead of simply crushing us. That's progress, I suppose. More than that, Rivers corrected. We've done what no other species has managed in 3,000 years. We've forced them to acknowledge us as equals. The bioweapon you deployed didn't just disrupt their neural network. It demonstrated a fundamental understanding of their biology and technology that they didn't think possible from a primitive species. And the other subjugated worlds, the slave species? Rivers' expression grew more serious. That's where things get complicated. According to the intelligence we've gathered, news of our resistance has already spread through the Empire. There are reports of unrest on several worlds. Species that have been under Zaharian control for centuries are beginning to question the natural order that they've been taught is immutable. We could have started a galactic civil war without meaning to, Murphy realized. Possibly. Or we could have created an opportunity for change on a scale we can barely comprehend. Rivers stood, her demeanor shifting back to the professional commander. That's a discussion for another day. However, for now, you need to rest and recover. Doctor's orders. As she turned to leave, Murphy called after her. Admiral, was it worth it? The cost? Rivers paused in the doorway, considering the question. We lost the Harbinger and her crew. Nemesis is so badly damaged she'll never fly again. Over 800 personnel dead or missing. She was silent for a moment before continuing. But Earth stands. Humanity survives. And we've discovered we're not alone in the universe. For better or worse. I'd say that's worth fighting for. After Rivers departed, Murphy lay back in his bed, contemplating the enormity of what had transpired. In the span of days, humanity had gone from believing itself alone in the universe to fighting for its very existence against an ancient empire, and somehow emerging not victorious, but undefeated, a distinction that had apparently made all the difference. His thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Captain Amy Foster, the young commander of the Valkyrie. Like Rivers, her uniform showed the strain of battle, but her eyes were bright with an energy that seemed undimmed by the ordeal. Captain Murphy, she greeted him with a respectful nod. I hope I'm not disturbing your recovery. Not at all, Murphy assured her, gesturing to a chair. Please, sit. How's the Valkyrie? Operational, though our quantum drives need significant repairs, Foster replied, taking the offered seat. We took heavy damage during the final engagement, but my crew performed admirably. Murphy nodded approvingly. I heard you executed a particularly daring maneuver to protect the civilian evacuation ships. Foster shrugged modestly. We did what was necessary, but that's not why I'm here. I wanted to thank you personally for your mission, what you and your team accomplished. It saved not just the fleet, but possibly humanity itself. We all played our part, Murphy replied. From what I hear, the negotiations with the Zaharians are proceeding. That's something none of us could have predicted. It's more than that, Foster said, leaning forward slightly. Admiral Rivers might not have told you, but the United Earth Council has already received communication from 3 other species within the Zaharian Empire. Secret transmissions, sent through channels the Zaharians don't monitor. They're reaching out, Captain. They want to know how we resisted, how we forced the Empire to the negotiating table. Murphy's eyebrows rose in surprise. What species? The Quillen, apparently, a highly intelligent aquatic species that manages the Zaharians' data systems. The Vextai, a warrior race that was subjugated 1,000 years ago and now serves as frontline troops in the Imperial forces. And the Kronar, a species with advanced artistic and cultural development that was reduced to creating propaganda and entertainment for their Zaharian masters. What do they want from us? Foster's expression grew more intense. Hope, Captain. They want to know if the story they've heard is true, that a species the Zaharians dismissed as primitive managed to stand against the Empire and survive. They want to know if another way is possible. Murphy considered this new information, the implications expanding in his mind like ripples from a stone cast into still water. What has the Council told them? Nothing yet. They're proceeding cautiously, aware that any communication with these species could jeopardize the ceasefire negotiations with the Zaharians. Foster paused, then added more quietly. But some of us believe we have a moral obligation to respond, to let them know they're not alone in questioning the Empire's right to rule. Murphy studied the young captain, recognizing in her the idealism that humanity would need in the challenging times ahead. You believe we should help them. I believe we should listen to them, Foster clarified. Learn from them. Understand what it means to exist in this galaxy before we decide our place in it. The Zaharians have controlled the narrative for 3,000 years. Captain, perhaps it's time for a new perspective. Their conversation was interrupted by a medical officer entering to check Murphy's condition. Foster rose to leave, but paused at the door. The United Earth Council is establishing a new division, she informed him. Something between diplomacy and intelligence, focused specifically on extraterrestrial relations. They're calling it the Interstellar Contact Division. Admiral Rivers has recommended you to lead it, once you've recovered. Murphy blinked in surprise. Me? I'm a military officer, not a diplomat. Foster smiled slightly. According to the Admiral, that's precisely why you're suited for the role. You've seen the Zaharians up close. You understand both the threat they pose and the possibility they represent. The Council needs someone who can navigate both aspects. After Foster departed, Murphy lay in contemplative silence, watching the stars through the viewport beside his bed. The same stars that humanity had gazed upon for millennia now held new meaning, new potential, and new dangers. 3 weeks later, fully recovered from his injuries, Murphy stood beside Admiral Rivers on the observation deck of the lunar base as the Zaharian diplomatic vessel approached. Unlike the warships they had faced in battle, this vessel was smaller, its organic design featuring iridescent patterns that shifted in complex, almost hypnotic sequences. Their equivalent of ceremonial dress, Rivers noted, observing the display. Impressive. And calculated, Murphy added. Everything they do is purposeful. This arrival is designed to convey both power and cultural sophistication. The Zaharian vessel docked with perfect precision at the designated attachment point. After a brief pause, the airlock cycled, and the delegation emerged, 5 Zaharians led by a figure whose ornate exoskeleton and elaborate biotechnological implants marked him as a high-ranking official. Admiral Kexar, Rivers identified him quietly. The commander of their reinforcement fleet and now their chief diplomat. Interesting choice. The Zaharian admiral approached, his movements fluid despite the apparent weight of his exoskeleton. When he spoke, his mandibles clicked softly, the sound translated by the advanced systems, developed specifically for this encounter. Admiral Rivers, Captain Murphy, I bring greetings from Emperor Caxtry and the Zaharian Dominion. Welcome to Earthspace, Admiral Kexar. Rivers responded formally. The United Earth Council awaits your delegation. As they escorted the Zaharians toward the conference chamber, Murphy studied their visitors with professional interest. Despite their alien physiology, he could detect subtle signs of tension, the way their sensory appendages remained in constant motion, the positioning of their limbs in what appeared to be a state of readiness. They're nervous, he murmured to Rivers. Wouldn't you be? She replied softly. They've never had to negotiate as equals before. This is uncharted territory for them. The formal diplomatic proceedings lasted for hours, with discussions of boundaries, recognition, and non-aggression dominating the agenda. Throughout, Murphy observed the Zaharian delegates, noting how they struggled with concepts like mutual respect and sovereignty. When the main session concluded for the day, Admiral Kexar approached Murphy directly. Captain, the Zaharian addressed him. Compound eyes, reflecting the artificial light in kaleidoscopic patterns. I am informed that you led the infiltration of our flagship, that you personally deployed the agent that disrupted our neural network. Murphy maintained a neutral expression. I was part of the team that carried out that mission. Yes. Kexar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sound Murphy now recognized as indicating intense emotion. You should not have been able to succeed. Our bioships are the pinnacle of Zaharian achievement, the perfect synthesis of technology and biology. No species has ever penetrated our defenses so effectively. Perhaps you underestimated us, Murphy suggested. A natural mistake when encountering a new species. Not a mistake the Empire has made in 3,000 years, Kexar replied, his translated voice carrying an undertone that might have been respect or resentment, or both. You were the last species we would have evaluated as a threat, and yet you were the first to force us to reassess our assumptions. Before Murphy could respond, the Zaharian admiral continued. There is something you should know, Captain. The disruption you caused, it did more than temporarily sever our neural connection. It introduced a new pattern into our collective consciousness, a dissonance that continues to reverberate. I'm not sure I understand, Murphy admitted. Nor do we, fully, Kexar replied. But I am authorized to inform you that certain adjustments are being considered within the Empire. The Emperor has ordered a comprehensive review of our classification protocols for intelligent species. Your resistance has complicated our understanding of evolutionary hierarchy. With that cryptic statement, the Zaharian admiral rejoined his delegation, leaving Murphy to ponder its implications. Later that evening, Murphy met with Rivers and Foster in a secure briefing room to discuss the day's developments. They're scared, Foster stated bluntly. Not just of our weapons or tactics, but of what we represent. We've disrupted their entire worldview. Rivers nodded. Which makes them dangerous. Cornered animals fight the hardest. Or adapt, Murphy countered. Kexar told me something interesting about our bioweapon causing ongoing dissonance in their collective consciousness. I think we did more than just temporarily disconnect their neural network. We may have introduced a new perspective into their hive mind. You think we changed how they think? Foster asked, intrigued. I think we created doubt, Murphy clarified. And in a species that has operated on absolute certainty for millennia, doubt is revolutionary. Rivers considered this. Whether that works in our favor remains to be seen. Meanwhile, we have more immediate concerns. She activated a holographic display, showing a series of encrypted transmissions. We've received additional communications from within the Empire, not just from the 3 species Captain Foster mentioned previously, but from 7 others. They're all reaching out, all asking the same basic question. How did Earth resist? What's the Council's position? Murphy asked. Divided, Rivers admitted. Some argue that we should focus exclusively on securing Earth's safety through the negotiations with the Zaharians. Others believe we have a moral obligation to respond to these species, that the very fact they've reached out to us creates a responsibility we can't ignore. "And where do you stand, Admiral?" Foster asked. Rivers was silent for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "I believe that what we do now will define humanity's place in the galaxy for centuries to come. If we secure our own safety at the expense of others, what does that say about us? But if we extend ourselves too far, too fast, we risk everything we fought to protect." Murphy studied the communications displayed before them, fragments of hope from beings he couldn't even visualize properly. "Perhaps there's a middle path. We continue negotiations with the Zaharians, but we also establish discrete channels of communication with these other species. Learn about them, understand their situations, before making any commitments." "A reasonable approach," Rivers agreed, "but one that carries significant risk. If the Zaharians discover these communications, they might already suspect," Foster pointed out. "They've ruled for 3,000 years. They must know that subjugated species would see our resistance as inspiration." Murphy nodded slowly. "Which gives us a potential leverage point in the negotiations. The Zaharians clearly value stability above all else. We could position ourselves as a moderating influence, a bridge between the Empire and its subjects." The three officers continued their discussion late into the night, weighing options and risks in a political landscape none of them had been trained to navigate. By morning, they had formulated a proposal for the United Earth Council, a delicate balance of diplomacy, intelligence gathering, and cautious outreach that might allow humanity to find its footing in this new interstellar reality. The negotiations with the Zaharian delegation continued for another week, gradually moving from immediate security concerns to broader questions of territorial recognition and technological exchange. Throughout, Murphy observed a subtle shift in the Zaharians' approach, a growing recognition, however reluctant, that humans could not be simply classified and assigned a place in their hierarchy. On the final day of the initial diplomatic summit, Admiral Kexar requested a private meeting with Murphy, Rivers, and President Chen. The request itself was unprecedented. Zaharians typically avoided one-on-one interactions with lesser species. In a secure conference room overlooking the lunar landscape, Kexar addressed the human representatives with uncharacteristic directness. "I am authorized by Emperor Caxtri to propose an arrangement beyond the formal treaty being negotiated." The Zaharian admiral began, his mandibles moving in precisely controlled patterns. "A separate understanding between our species." President Chen maintained a diplomatic, neutral expression. "We're listening, Admiral. The Empire has existed for 3,000 years because it provides order," Kexar continued. "Each species has its place, its function. This system has prevented the chaos that plagued the galaxy before our ascendance." A perspective not universally shared, I imagine, Rivers noted carefully. Kexar's compound eyes shifted toward her. "Indeed. And therein lies the matter I am authorized to discuss. Your resistance has created ripples. Subjects who were content in their assigned roles are now questioning the natural order. This is disruptive." "Forgive me, Admiral," Murphy interjected, "but it sounds like you're describing the beginnings of rebellion within your empire." "A crude characterization, but not entirely inaccurate," Kexar acknowledged. "The Emperor recognizes that a new approach may be necessary, one that acknowledges the unique position your species now occupies in the galactic consciousness." "And what position is that?" President Chen asked. "You are viewed as proof that the imperial hierarchy is not immutable. That resistance is possible." Kexar's mandibles clicked rapidly. "This perception threatens 3 millennia of stability." "I fail to see how this is our concern," Rivers said. though her tone suggested she understood perfectly well what the Zaharian was suggesting. "The Emperor proposes an alliance," Kexar stated bluntly. "Not subjugation, not integration, but mutual cooperation. Humanity would be recognized as an independent power, the first such recognition in imperial history. In exchange, you would help stabilize the perception of our other subject species." "You want us to tell them not to resist," Murphy translated, "to accept their place in your hierarchy. I want you to help maintain the order that has prevented galactic war for 3,000 years. Kexar countered. Before the Zaharian Empire, species fought constantly for dominance. Entire civilizations were eradicated in these conflicts. Our system, while perhaps imperfect by your standards, has provided stability. President Chen leaned forward. "And if we decline this proposal?" "Then we return to the formal treaty negotiations," Kexar replied smoothly. "But without this separate understanding, the Empire will be forced to take more direct measures to address the unrest you have inadvertently inspired. Measures that may not align with your apparent ethical concerns for these species." The implicit threat hung in the air between them. "We will need to discuss this with the full council," President Chen said finally. "This goes beyond what our negotiating team is authorized to decide." "Of course," Kexar agreed, rising to his impressive full height. "But do not delay overlong. The Empire has existed for 3,000 years because it acts decisively when faced with threats to stability." After the Zaharian admiral departed, the three humans remained in contemplative silence for several moments. "A clever move," Rivers noted finally. "Offering us exceptional status in exchange for helping them maintain control over everyone else." "The oldest tactic in the book," Murphy agreed. "Divide and conquer. Give the troublemakers special privileges so they'll help keep everyone else in line." President Chen sighed heavily. "And yet, his point about stability cannot be entirely dismissed. We know nothing about these other species beyond what they've told us in encrypted messages and what the Zaharians have shared. For all we know, some of them could pose as great a threat to Earth as the Zaharians themselves." "So what do we do?" Rivers asked. "Accept the devil we know over the ones we don't?" Chen's expression hardened with resolve. "We do what humanity has always done when faced with impossible choices. We find another way." 2 days later, as the Zaharian delegation prepared to depart with the draft treaty that would establish a tenuous peace between Earth and the Empire, Murphy received an unexpected visitor in his temporary quarters at the lunar base. Captain Amy Foster arrived without announcement, her expression tight with controlled excitement. "Captain, I need to show you something. Something that changes everything." She activated a portable holoprojector, displaying what appeared to be a stellar cartography map of the galaxy, with the Zaharian Empire highlighted in red. "This was compiled from the data you retrieved from the Zaharian vessel," she explained. "Our analysts have been working to decode it fully. Yesterday, they made a breakthrough." The display zoomed in on a sector far from both Earth and the core Zaharian worlds, a region marked with a symbol Murphy didn't recognize. "What am I looking at?" he asked. "The sanctuary worlds," Foster replied, her voice hushed with significance. "A cluster of systems that the Zaharians have quarantined completely. No access, no monitoring, no contact of any kind for over 2,000 years. Murphy's interest sharpened. "Why would they isolate these worlds?" "According to the fragments we've decoded, these systems are home to species that the Zaharians could neither conquer nor completely destroy. Species with technology or abilities that the Empire found problematic." "Problematic how?" Foster manipulated the display, bringing up fragmentary text in the Zaharian language with human translations alongside. "The records are deliberately vague, but they reference reality manipulation, consciousness transference, and dimensional instability. Whatever these species could do, it frightened the Zaharians enough that they chose containment over conquest. Murphy studied the information, his mind racing with implications. You think these quarantined species could be potential allies? I think they represent an option beyond what the Zaharians have offered us, Foster clarified. A third path that neither accepts the Empire's terms, nor leaves us standing alone against them. Have you shown this to Admiral Rivers or President Chen? Foster hesitated. Not yet. I wanted your assessment first. The Admiral respects your judgment, and after what you accomplished on the Zaharian flagship, Murphy nodded, understanding the unspoken implication. His successful mission had given him a certain credibility in matters concerning the alien empire. This information could indeed change our strategic position, he acknowledged. But attempting to contact species the Zaharians deliberately quarantined carries enormous risks. We know nothing about them beyond these cryptic descriptions. True, Foster conceded. But consider the alternative. Either we accept second-class status in the galaxy, helping the Zaharians maintain their dominion over others, or we face the Empire's eventual return with overwhelming force. Because make no mistake, Captain, this treaty is just a temporary measure. The Zaharians will never accept our independence in the long term. Murphy couldn't disagree with her assessment. Everything he had learned about the Zaharian mindset suggested they viewed the current negotiations as a tactical retreat, not a permanent acceptance of humanity's autonomy. Take this to Admiral Rivers, he decided, but emphasize that we need more information before considering any action. These sanctuary worlds have been isolated for 2,000 years. There's no telling what's actually there now, or how any surviving species might view an unexpected contact from another civilization. Foster nodded, clearly pleased that he hadn't dismissed the discovery outright. I'll bring it to her attention immediately. Thank you, Captain. After she left, Murphy turned back to the viewport, gazing out at the stars with new perspective. The galaxy had suddenly become both larger and smaller, filled with more possibilities and more dangers than humanity had ever imagined. The next morning, a priority summons brought Murphy to a secure facility beneath the lunar surface. There, he found Rivers, President Chen, and a select group of council representatives gathered around a holographic display similar to the one Foster had shown him. Captain Foster brought this information to our attention, Rivers explained without preamble. Your thoughts? Murphy chose his words carefully. The discovery of these sanctuary worlds represents a potentially significant factor in our strategic calculations. However, I believe we need substantially more intelligence before considering any attempt at contact. Agreed, Chen said, nodding. Unfortunately, time is not on our side. Our analysts have detected increased activity throughout the Zaharian fleet. They're repositioning forces, strengthening their presence along the borders of their territory, including the region nearest to our solar system. They're preparing for the possibility that we reject their offer, Rivers added grimly. Murphy studied the display, noting the Zaharian fleet movements. They're creating a containment perimeter. If we don't agree to help maintain their order, they'll ensure we can't disrupt it further. Precisely, Chen confirmed, which leaves us with limited options and an extremely narrow time frame in which to act. One of the council representatives, a stern-faced woman Murphy recognized as the head of the African Union, stepped forward. We have authorized a covert mission to the nearest of these sanctuary worlds. A small vessel, minimal crew, maximum stealth. Their objective will be reconnaissance only, to determine if these quarantined species still exist and, if so, to assess their potential as allies. A considerable risk, Murphy noted. One we believe is necessary, Chen replied. The Zaharian delegation expects our answer to their proposal within 3 days. We cannot make such a momentous decision without exploring all available options. Rivers turned to Murphy, her expression serious. We want you to lead the mission, Captain. Your experience with the Zaharians and your demonstrated ability to adapt to alien encounters make you uniquely qualified. Murphy felt the weight of the request settle on his shoulders. Another mission with potentially galaxy-altering consequences. When would we depart? Immediately, Chen answered. The Phantom has been modified with enhanced stealth systems, based on what we learned from the Zaharian encounter. You'll be able to slip past their patrol vessels if you depart, while their attention is focused on the diplomatic proceedings. And my team? Captain Foster has volunteered to serve as your executive officer, Rivers informed him. Technical Specialist Tanaka will accompany you to analyze any alien technology you encounter. The rest of the crew will be your choice, but keep it minimal, no more than 6 total. Murphy nodded, already mentally reviewing potential candidates. Our specific objectives? Reconnaissance only, Chen emphasized. Determine if these quarantine species still exist. If they do, establish initial contact and assess their disposition toward both humanity and the Zaharians. Under no circumstances are you to make any commitments or agreements on behalf of Earth. Understood, Madam President. When do I brief my team? Now, Rivers replied. The Phantom is being prepared as we speak. You depart in 6 hours. 6 hours later, Murphy stood on the bridge of the Phantom, reviewing final preparations with his small crew. Besides Foster and Tanaka, he had selected Sergeant Rodriguez for security, Communications Specialist Santos for her expertise in linguistic analysis, and Technical Specialist Cater for his engineering skills. Our destination is designated Sanctuary World Alpha, he informed them, activating the navigation display. According to the Zaharian records, it's a terrestrial planet orbiting a yellow dwarf star approximately 20 light-years from Earth. The species that inhabited this world is identified only as the architects in the translated texts. Any information on why they were quarantined? Rodriguez asked, checking her weapon systems with practiced efficiency. Fragments only, Foster replied. References to reality manipulation and technology that violated what the Zaharians considered the natural laws of the universe. Sounds properly intimidating, Santos commented, adjusting her communications array. Any guidance on how we're supposed to communicate with beings that scared an empire into leaving them alone? We'll start with observation, Murphy decided. Establish orbit at a safe distance and conduct passive scans only. If we detect signs of advanced civilization, we'll proceed with caution. Under no circumstances do we reveal Earth's location or details about our conflict with the Zaharians until we've established their intentions. The team nodded their understanding, each focusing on their preparations with the professionalism that had made them Murphy's first choices for this critical mission. Quantum drive ready, Cater reported from the engineering station. Stealth systems at maximum efficiency. We're as invisible as we're going to get. Murphy took his place in the command chair, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility. Then, let's not waste any more time. Initiate launch sequence. Course set for Sanctuary World Alpha. Maximum sustainable speed. The Phantom detached from its lunar berth, accelerating smoothly away from Earth's gravitational influence. Once clear of the solar system, Cater engaged the quantum drive, and the small vessel vanished into the distorted reality of FTL travel. The journey to Sanctuary World Alpha took just under 3 days at the Phantom's maximum sustainable speed. Throughout the voyage, the crew analyzed the fragmentary Zaharian records about their destination, attempting to piece together a more complete picture of what they might encounter. It's strange, Tanaka observed during one of their strategy sessions. The Zaharians are meticulous record keepers in most respects, but the information about these sanctuary worlds is deliberately obscured, almost as if they were afraid that too much knowledge about these species might be dangerous in itself. Or they were embarrassed, Foster suggested. These worlds represent their failures, places where their superior technology and biology couldn't establish dominance. That contradicts their entire imperial narrative. Murphy considered both perspectives. Either way, it leaves us with minimal intelligence about what we're walking into. We'll need to be prepared for anything. As they approached their destination, Santos detected the first anomaly. Captain, I'm picking up unusual energy patterns at the edge of the star system. They don't match any known configuration, Zaharian, human, or theoretical. Some kind of defense system? Rodriguez suggested. Possibly, Santos replied. But it doesn't appear to be scanning us or reacting to our presence. It's more like a boundary. Slow our approach, Murphy ordered. Passive scans only. Let's see what we're dealing with before we commit. The Phantom reduced speed, maintaining its stealth profile as it approached the unusual energy field. Tanaka devoted all sensor resources to analyzing the phenomenon. It's like nothing I've ever seen, she reported. Her voice tinged with scientific excitement despite the potential danger. It appears to be a deliberate distortion in space-time, not a barrier in the conventional sense, but a region where the fundamental laws of physics are flexible. Can we pass through it safely? Murphy asked. Tanaka studied her readings. I believe so. Yes. But I can't predict how it might affect our systems. We should power down all non-essential equipment and proceed at minimum speed. Murphy nodded. Make the necessary preparations. We'll proceed with caution. As the Phantom approached the boundary, the view screen displayed a visual distortion, space itself seeming to ripple and bend in impossible ways. The ship's quantum sensors began registering increasingly unusual readings, detecting particles and energy states that shouldn't exist in normal space. Boundary in 5, 4, 3. Cater counted down, monitoring the ship's systems closely. The moment of transition was both subtle and profound. There was no physical sensation of passing through a barrier, but suddenly, the stars visible through the view screen shifted position, as if the ship had jumped instantaneously to a different location. Position check, Murphy ordered, fighting a momentary disorientation. Sensors indicate we're now within the sanctuary system, Foster reported, her voice steady despite the unsettling experience. The star matches Zaharian records for Alpha. We're approximately 4 astronomical units from the primary. All systems functioning normally, Cater added. Whatever that boundary was, it doesn't appear to have affected our technology. Proceed toward the planet, Murphy directed. Maintain stealth protocols and passive scanning only. As the Phantom approached the inner system, the sensors detected the designated sanctuary world, a blue-green planet, somewhat larger than Earth, with 2 small moons and what appeared to be extensive oceanic coverage. Life signs, Murphy asked. Tanaka studied her readouts with a frown of concentration. Definite biological activity, but the patterns are unusual, not registering as individual organisms so much as a network. It's difficult to interpret. Any sign of technology or artificial structures? Yes, but again, not in forms we'd typically recognize, Tanaka replied. There appear to be massive structures both on the surface and in orbit, but they're integrated with the biological patterns, almost as if the technology and life forms are a single system. Murphy considered this information. Position us in high orbit, out of the path of any satellites or space traffic they might have. Let's observe for a full planetary rotation before deciding our next move. The Phantom established a stable orbit at a safe distance, its sensors gathering data on the mysterious world below. As hours passed, the crew began to form a clearer, if still incomplete, picture of what they were observing. The entire planet appears to be a single, integrated ecosystem. Tanaka reported during their first comprehensive assessment. The structures we're detecting aren't separate from the biological systems. They're extensions of them. Technology and biology merged at a fundamental level. Like the Zaharian bioships but on a planetary scale? Foster asked. Tanaka shook her head. More advanced by orders of magnitude. The Zaharians graft technology onto biological systems. Whatever we're seeing here, the distinction between artificial and natural has been completely transcended. "Have they detected us?" Murphy asked. "No indication of that," Santos replied. "I'm not detecting any communication signals directed at us, or any change in the energy patterns around the planet." Murphy studied the visual feed of the planet below, its surface covered in what appeared to be vast, interconnected structures that pulsed with living energy. "If this civilization is as advanced as it appears, our stealth systems might not be sufficient to hide from them. They may simply be observing us, deciding how to respond." As if in response to his words, Santos suddenly straightened at her console. "Captain, I'm detecting a signal. Very faint, very precise, directed specifically at our position." "Origin?" "The larger of the two moons," Santos reported. "It appears to be an invitation." "An invitation?" Rodriguez echoed skeptically. "To what?" Santos worked to clarify the signal. "It's not using any conventional communication protocol, but the pattern suggests coordinates on the moon's surface and what might be landing parameters." Murphy exchanged glances with Foster. "They definitely know we're here. And they're inviting us down rather than coming up to meet us," Foster noted. "Interesting choice." "Or a trap," Rodriguez suggested pragmatically. Murphy considered their options. Their mission was reconnaissance and potential first contact, objectives that couldn't be fully achieved from orbit. Yet landing on an alien moon, at the invitation of a completely unknown species, carried obvious risks. "Opinions?" he asked his team. "I believe we should accept," Tanaka said immediately. "The level of technology we're observing suggests that, if they intended us harm, our current position wouldn't provide any safety anyway." "Agreed," Foster added. "We came to establish contact. This is our opportunity. With appropriate precautions," Rodriguez qualified. "Full environmental suits, weapons ready, but not displayed aggressively." Murphy nodded, having reached the same conclusion. "Prepare the landing shuttle. Foster, Rodriguez, and Tanaka will accompany me to the surface. Santos and Cater will remain aboard the Phantom, maintaining constant communication and ready to extract us if necessary." Preparations for the landing operation proceeded with methodical efficiency. The team donned advanced environmental suits designed to protect against both conventional hazards and potential biological contaminants. Though equipped with sidearms, they took care to configure their equipment in the least threatening posture possible. "Remember," Murphy instructed as they boarded the shuttle, "we represent humanity's first contact with a non-Zaharian advanced species. Our primary objective is to establish peaceful communication and assess their potential as allies. No provocative actions under any circumstances." The shuttle detached from the Phantom, descending toward the coordinates provided in the alien signal. As they approached the moon's surface, they observed a landscape unlike anything in human experience. What appeared to be a harmonious blend of natural terrain and constructed environment, with no clear delineation between the two. "It's beautiful," Foster remarked softly, gazing through the viewport. "Like the entire moon has been transformed into a living artwork." The shuttle's guidance systems identified a landing zone, a circular platform that seemed to emerge organically from the surrounding landscape. As they touched down, the material beneath them shifted slightly, adapting to the shuttle's weight and configuration. "The platform is analyzing our vessel," Tanaka reported, monitoring her instruments. "Scanning it at the molecular level, but not in a way that suggests hostility. More like curiosity." Murphy took a deep breath, centering himself for what would undoubtedly be a historic moment. "Final equipment check. Then we proceed outside. Stay together, remain calm, and follow my lead." The team exited the shuttle, stepping onto the alien surface with cautious reverence. The landscape around them pulsed with subtle energy, colors shifting in patterns that seemed almost meaningful, as if the environment itself was communicating. For several moments, nothing happened. The four humans stood in a loose formation beside their shuttle, sensors recording everything while they waited for some sign of their hosts. Then, without warning or visible approach, a figure stood before them. It appeared humanoid, but with proportions that suggested an artistic interpretation rather than a biological reality. Tall and slender, with limbs that seemed too graceful to be functional. Its surface shimmered with patterns of light that constantly shifted, giving the impression of a being composed of pure energy, given temporary form. "Greetings, visitors." The figure spoke, or rather, the words formed directly in the humans' minds, bypassing conventional sound. "We are the architects. We have been expecting you." Murphy stepped forward, careful to move slowly and keep his hands visible. "I am Captain Jake Murphy of Earth. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and potentially friendship." The figure's luminous patterns rippled in what might have been amusement. "Earth. Yes. The recent disturbance in the Zaharian collective. You have disrupted patterns that have remained stable for millennia." "Interesting. You know of our encounter with the Zaharians?" Murphy asked, surprised. "We observe. We have always observed, even confined within this sanctuary." The figure gestured, and the landscape around them transformed, displaying what appeared to be a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. "The Zaharians believe they isolated us. In truth, we chose separation. Their understanding was insufficient." Foster spoke up, her scientific curiosity evident despite the overwhelming strangeness of the situation. "The Zaharian records suggest they quarantined you because your technology violated natural laws." The figure's form shimmered with more complex patterns. "An accurate assessment, from their perspective. We do not recognize the distinction between technology and nature that limits their understanding. To the Zaharians, reality is fixed and immutable. To us, it is malleable." As if to demonstrate, the being gestured again, and a small portion of the moon's surface rose up, reshaping itself into an exact replica of the phantom in orbit above them. "Your vessel," the architect stated. "Interesting design. Primitive in many respects, but with potential." Murphy maintained his composure, despite the casual display of power that far exceeded anything humanity had achieved. "We've come because Earth faces a difficult choice. The Zaharians have offered us a place of privilege within their empire if we help maintain their control over other species. We seek alternatives. You seek allies against the Zaharians," the architect translated, its thought voice neither approving nor condemning. "You are not the first to come here with such hopes. Others have sought our power throughout the millennia of our isolation." "And what did you tell them?" Murphy asked. "That power without understanding leads only to greater conflicts," the being replied. "The Zaharians quarantined us not because they feared our weapons, but because they feared our ideas. We represent a reality in which their rigid hierarchy has no meaning, where consciousness itself defines existence, not biological taxonomy." Tanaka stepped forward, her scientific fascination overriding protocol. "Your civilization appears to have transcended the boundary between biology and technology. How is this possible?" The architect's patterns shifted to what seemed a more focused configuration. "An insightful question. The answer, in terms you might comprehend, is that we recognize that consciousness is not a product of biology or technology, but rather the fundamental force that shapes both. What you perceive as our technology is simply the extension of conscious intent into physical form." Murphy tried to process the implications of what they were hearing. A civilization that had apparently mastered reality itself at the most fundamental level. "If your abilities are as profound as they appear, why have you remained isolated? Why not challenge the Zaharian Empire directly?" "For the same reason that a parent does not solve every problem for a child," the architect replied. "Growth requires struggle, Understanding requires experience. Had we intervened, the galaxy would have exchanged one form of dependency for another. Foster's expression was troubled behind her helmet visor. You've watched as the Zaharians subjugated countless species, and did nothing. We have observed, we have preserved, and occasionally we have nudged. The being's form shifted again, displaying what appeared to be a timeline of galactic history. When necessary, we have prevented extinction events, preserved cultural knowledge, ensured that potential remained even within the constraints of imperial control. And now, Murphy pressed, humanity stands at a crossroads. We cannot defeat the Zaharian Empire alone, yet we cannot accept their terms without betraying our principles. What would you have us do? The architect was silent for a moment, its luminous patterns cycling through complex sequences. You seek a simple answer to a complex question. There is none. But perhaps we can offer perspective. The landscape around them shifted again, this time forming into a vast, amphitheater-like space. Within it appeared representatives of numerous alien species, some vaguely humanoid, others wildly different in form and apparent function. These are the species that comprise the Zaharian Empire, the architect explained, each with their own history, their own potential, their own consciousness, all constrained by a system that denies their full expression. The images shifted, focusing on specific worlds and civilizations. The Quillen, masters of information and pattern recognition. The Vextai, warriors whose concept of honor transcends mere combat. The Kronar, artists whose creations once spanned dimensions, all reduced to functional roles within the imperial hierarchy. Murphy studied the images, recognizing some of the species from the encrypted communications Earth had received. You're suggesting that our true allies are not singular powerful entities like yourselves, but the collective potential of these subjugated species. Perceptive, the architect acknowledged. The Zaharians maintain control through isolation, ensuring that each subject species believes itself alone in its discontent. Your resistance has created a crack in that isolation. For the first time in millennia, these species are beginning to communicate, to share, to imagine alternatives. But without external support, any rebellion would be crushed. Rodriguez pointed out pragmatically. The Zaharians have overwhelming military superiority. In conventional terms, yes, the architect agreed. But conventional conflict is not the only path to transformation. The Zaharians' greatest vulnerability is not their military capacity, but their conceptual rigidity, their absolute certainty in the correctness of their hierarchy. Foster's eyes widened with sudden understanding. That's why our bioweapon was so effective. It didn't just disrupt their neural network temporarily. It introduced doubt into a system built on certainty. Precisely, the architect confirmed. You have already planted the seed of their eventual transformation. The question is whether you will nurture it or allow the Zaharians to isolate and contain it, as they did with us. Murphy considered the being's words carefully. What exactly are you suggesting we do? We offer no directive, the architect replied. Only information and perspective. What you choose to do with it will demonstrate whether humanity is truly ready for its place in the greater community of consciousness. With that cryptic statement, the being gestured once more, and the environment around them transformed again. This time, it displayed a complex network of connections between various worlds, communication channels, trade routes, cultural exchanges that had once existed before Zaharian dominance. Before the Empire, the galaxy was not perfect, the architect explained. There were conflicts, misunderstandings, even wars. But there was also growth, exchange, evolution of consciousness. These pathways still exist, dormant beneath the imperial structure. They could be reawakened. Murphy studied the display intently, beginning to understand what the architect was suggesting. not a conventional alliance or military strategy, but something more profound, a fundamental restructuring of how species interacted across the galaxy. "You're talking about restoring communication between these worlds," he said slowly. "Creating a network of resistance not through force, but through shared knowledge and mutual support." "A network of consciousness," the architect corrected gently. "Power concentrated is power corrupted. Power distributed is power transformed." Foster looked troubled. "But how could Earth possibly facilitate such a network? The Zaharians control all interstellar communications and travel within their empire." In response, the architect's form shifted again, this time resolving into something that resembled a small, crystalline device. "This contains knowledge, technical specifications for communication technology that operates outside Zaharian detection parameters. A gift, freely given, with no obligation attached." The crystal floated gently toward Murphy, hovering before him. "Take it or leave it, as you choose. We offer no guarantees, no protection, no direct intervention, only possibility." Murphy hesitated, aware of the potential significance of this moment. "Why give this to us? Why now, after millennia of isolation?" "Because you asked," the architect replied simply. "Because you came seeking not conquest or power, but understanding. And because the patterns are shifting, the galaxy approaches a nexus point, a moment where multiple futures become possible. What emerges will depend on the choices made by many consciousness, yours among them." After a moment's consideration, Murphy carefully took the crystal, which felt surprisingly warm to the touch, even through his suit's gloves. "Thank you for this gift. I cannot promise how Earth will choose to use it, but I can promise that we will consider its implications carefully." "That is all any consciousness can do," the architect responded. "Choose wisely, with awareness of the ripples each choice creates across the fabric of reality." The being's form began to fade, its luminous patterns dispersing into the environment around them. "Our time of direct interaction ends. Return to your people. Consider what you have learned. The path you choose will define not only humanity's future, but the shape of consciousness throughout this galaxy for millennia to come." With those words, the architect vanished completely, leaving the four humans standing alone on the alien moon, the crystal device the only tangible evidence of their extraordinary encounter. "Did that really just happen?" Rodriguez asked, breaking the awed silence that had fallen over the team. "Sensor logs confirm it," Tanaka replied, checking her equipment. "Though I doubt our instruments captured even a fraction of what we experienced." Murphy carefully secured the crystal in a containment field. "We have what we came for, perhaps more than we anticipated. Let's return to the Phantom and set course for Earth. The Council needs to hear about this immediately." 3 days later, the Phantom re-entered Earth's solar system, approaching the lunar base with caution. To Murphy's relief, the situation appeared unchanged. The Zaharian diplomatic vessel still docked, negotiations presumably continuing. As soon as they established secure communications, Admiral Rivers' voice came through, tense with urgency. "Captain Murphy, report your findings immediately. The Zaharian delegation is expecting our answer tomorrow." In a secure briefing room deep beneath the lunar surface, Murphy, Foster, and Tanaka presented their findings to President Chen, Admiral Rivers, and a select group of council representatives. The crystal device sat at the center of the table, its peculiar luminescence casting shifting patterns across their faces. "Let me be certain I understand what you're proposing," President Chen said, after they had explained the architect's perspective and the potential contained within the crystal. "Rather than either accepting the Zaharians' offer or standing alone against them, you suggest we become the nexus for a galaxy-wide network of communication between subjugated species. A network that could eventually transform the Empire from within," Murphy confirmed. "Not through violent revolution, but through the gradual restoration of connections that the Zaharians have systematically severed." And this technology, Rivers indicated the crystal, would allow such communication without Zaharian detection? Tanaka nodded. Based on my preliminary analysis, it operates on principles that bypass conventional subspace channels entirely. It's not just advanced technology. It's fundamentally different technology, operating on principles the Zaharians don't even recognize as possible. The risks are enormous, noted one council representative. If the Zaharians discovered our involvement in such a network, they would consider it an act of war, Rivers finished grimly. One we are not equipped to survive. The risks of any choice are significant, Foster countered. If we accept the Zaharians' offer, we become complicit in the continued subjugation of countless beings. If we reject it without an alternative strategy, we face eventual conquest ourselves. Murphy addressed the central concern directly. This approach offers a middle path, one that aligns with human values while recognizing our limited power in the current galactic reality. We don't directly challenge the Zaharian Empire militarily, but we also don't accept their vision of a hierarchical galaxy. President Chen studied the crystal thoughtfully. And these architects made no demands, offered no alliance? None, Murphy confirmed. They explicitly stated that the gift comes with no obligations. They've chosen a path of non-intervention, believing that each species must find its own way. The room fell silent as the implications settled over the assembled leaders. Finally, Admiral Rivers spoke. I've spent my career preparing humanity to defend itself against existential threats, she said slowly. I believe that meant building weapons, ships, defense systems. But perhaps true security lies not in our capacity for destruction, but in our ability to forge connections, to recognize that our fate is bound up with the fate of others throughout the galaxy. Chen nodded, her expression resolute. We need to put this to a full council vote immediately. But first, I want to hear your recommendation, Captain Murphy. You've faced the Zaharians in battle and now encountered this alternative perspective. What path should humanity choose? Murphy took a moment to gather his thoughts, aware of the historic weight of his words. Madam President, throughout human history, we've faced moments where the easier path was complicity with systems of oppression, while the harder path was standing for something more. Those choices defined us as a species. This is such a moment, but on a galactic scale. He gestured to the crystal device. The architects offered us knowledge without obligation, because they recognize that true transformation cannot be imposed from outside. It must emerge from within, through conscious choice. I believe humanity should make the harder choice, to become not conquerors or collaborators, but connectors, to use this gift to begin restoring the networks of communication and cooperation that the Zaharian Empire dismantled. And if that choice leads to conflict? Rivers asked quietly. Then we face it knowing we stood for something worth fighting for, Murphy replied. The Zaharians ruled unchallenged for 3,000 years because they convinced every species that resistance was futile and isolation was inevitable. We've already proven the first premise false. Now we have the opportunity to disprove the second. President Chen's expression was solemn as she absorbed Murphy's words. Thank you, Captain. Your perspective will be given significant weight in our deliberations. She rose from her seat. I'll convene the full council immediately. We have less than 24 hours to decide humanity's place in the galaxy. The council's deliberations lasted through the night, as representatives from all Earth nations debated the monumental choice before them. Murphy, Foster, and the rest of the Phantom's crew waited tensely for the decision, knowing that whatever path humanity chose, the galaxy would never be the same. Shortly before the deadline set by the Zaharian delegation, President Chen summoned Murphy to her office. Admiral Rivers was already present, her expression giving nothing away. The Council has reached its decision, Chen announced without preamble. By a significant majority, we have chosen to decline the Zaharian offer of special status within the Empire. Murphy felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. And the alternative strategy? Also approved, Chen confirmed. We will proceed with the development of the communication network based on the architect's technology. The Council believes that fostering connections between subjugated species aligns with humanity's highest values and offers the best long-term hope for a more just galactic order. The Zaharians won't simply accept our rejection, Rivers noted. They'll demand an explanation, and eventually, they'll discover what we're doing. Which is why we need to buy time, Chen replied. Captain Murphy, the Council has appointed you as Earth's chief negotiator with the Zaharian delegation. Your mission is to secure the most favorable terms possible while we implement the first phase of the network. Murphy's eyebrows rose in surprise. Madam President, I'm a military officer, not a diplomat. You're someone who has seen both sides of this equation, Chen corrected. You've faced the Zaharians in battle and stood in the presence of beings who transcend our understanding of reality itself. That perspective is what we need in these negotiations. Rivers nodded her agreement. Besides, the Zaharians respect you. You penetrated their flagship, disrupted their neural network, and returned with their secrets. That commands a certain attention. Murphy considered the assignment, recognizing both its importance and its inherent challenges. What exactly are my negotiating parameters? Secure recognition of Earth's sovereignty and a non-aggression pact, Chen instructed. Buy as much time as possible before they expect any concrete action from us regarding their other subject species. And most importantly, give no indication of our true intentions. Understood, Madam President. Murphy straightened, accepting the responsibility. When do I begin? Immediately, Chen replied. The Zaharian delegation is awaiting our response in the main conference chamber. Admiral Rivers will accompany you, but you will take the lead. As Murphy and Rivers walked toward the conference chamber, the Admiral spoke quietly. The Council may have made its decision, but the real work is just beginning. Establishing this communication network while avoiding Zaharian detection will require extraordinary coordination and secrecy. Captain Foster has already begun working with Dr. Tanaka on adapting the architect's technology for our use, Murphy informed her. They believe we can have the first nodes operational within weeks. Rivers nodded approvingly. Foster's passion for this project is evident. The Council has approved her promotion, by the way. She'll be commanding the Valkyrie on its new mission. New mission? The Dreadnoughts are being repurposed, Rivers explained. No longer just warships, but vessels of connection. Each will carry the technology to establish nodes in the network, operating under the guise of standard patrol and exploration missions. They reached the doors of the conference chamber, pausing before entering. Rivers placed a hand on Murphy's shoulder. Whatever happens in there, remember that you're no longer fighting just for Earth. You're negotiating for the future of consciousness throughout the galaxy. Murphy nodded, the weight of that responsibility settling over him. A future where no species stands alone. Inside the conference chamber, Admiral Kexar and the Zaharian delegation awaited Earth's response. As Murphy approached the negotiating table, he carried with him not just the Council's decision, but the Crystal's promise, a vision of a galaxy reconnected, a hierarchy dismantled not through force, but through the power of shared consciousness. The Zaharian Admiral's compound eyes fixed on him with alien intensity. Captain Murphy, the Empire awaits humanity's decision. Murphy met that alien gaze steadily, his voice clear and resolute. Admiral Kexar, on behalf of the United Earth Council, I am authorized to present our response to the Empire's proposal. As he began to outline humanity's terms, careful to reveal nothing of their true intentions, Murphy felt a profound sense of purpose. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Earth had chosen its path, not conquerors, not collaborators, but connectors. the first threads in a new tapestry of galactic consciousness that would ultimately transform even the Zaharians themselves. Far beyond the negotiating table, beyond the solar system, beyond even the reach of the Zaharian Empire, the architects observed the patterns of possibility shifting. The seed had been planted. What would grow from it remained to be seen. But for the first time in 3,000 years, the future was no longer fixed. New patterns were emerging, new connections forming, new consciousness awakening. The galaxy would never be the same.